In Kemetic spirituality, I see source as the Aten. And the Aten is the finite point, that which is and emanates the creator light through all beings, including deities, because deities are just higher dimensional lords of light or higher dimensional servants of emanations of source. So they're What's up, guys? Welcome back to Live Like Lo. This is Lo, and today we're going to be talking about who is source in my practice. Now, who is source for real, for real? So source, the way that I see source, is God, the creator, the everything. And when I say the everything, I literally mean that. Every single molecule, every single electron, atom, and neutron are emanations of source, putting together and building together in different geometric forms to create what we see here, physicality or non-physicality or gaseous physicality, depending on where you are and where in the solar system or where in the universe you are. Those things combine differently to create different types of life forms, etc., right? So let's dive in a little bit more. Now, I am going to try my best not to go way too far into backstory, but I am going to let you guys know that back in, I want to say 2019? So at the end of 2020, during the pandemic, right? This is actually when I started kind of getting really serious about my influencer journey, YouTube, TikTok, all of that stuff. During this time, I took my first introduction and my first course in my healing modality, the Melchizedek method. And this method uses a lot of different ancient modalities to create this healing system. And it is supposedly channeled by Thoth, who told me to take the course. So of course, I'm in. After taking this, maybe like 2 or 3 weeks after, I heard out of the sky, y'all. And I usually go outside to like meditate and try and like focusing on working on my clairvoyance. And then out of the sky, it was just like thunder, like this voice came and was just talking to me. And it was so loud, like it was deafening. It was so intense. Like I could feel it in my body. Like it was just boom, 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 boom. Even though that was just like the energy of it just emanating to me. It was, y'all, I almost shit myself. Like I was scared. Do you hear me? When I started talking with Source, I applied Source as Amun Ra, because that day the sun was just following me everywhere, and I love working with Ra. So then me and Ra became very connected. Ra introduced me to a concept that he calls the 1,000-layer sun. This is the way that I'm going to explain it to you guys so that it makes sense, because otherwise it's going to be really hard to explain and for you to conceptualize to take anything away from this, okay? Because it took me months to break this down to this point, and still there's more. The way that Ra showed me is that every single solar system has a sun. Every single galaxy, like we live in the Milky Way, right? Every single galaxy has a central sun. Some have more than one, but most have a central sun, a really just giant fucking sun. And all of those stars, all of those planets, all of those rocks, all of that gas, all rotates within the gravitational field of this central sun, right? While also in a smaller way, just like Source, would condense down into the solar system and they would be gravitating around that sun. Now, something Spirit would like me to also say that may not be in the human consciousness at this time is there are solar systems that rotate in the greater galaxy, like in the context of the greater galaxy in the central sun, that revolve around another sun that they cannot conceptualize. That's kind of how that would work. It would be a sun with a few gigantic planets, and then further away, there would be maybe another sun or a dwarf star that will also operate with other things rotating it, and that sun would be rotating that larger sun, which is also rotating the central sun. Now, I know this is getting very like spacey, but I need you to conceptualize this, so just take it in, okay? Now, every central sun in the galaxy, each galaxy is all rotating the finite point in each universe. Got it. Okay, now finite point is source, right? But I want you to think about it like a stack, okay? So each universe is stacked very closely together, going up, going sideways, going left, right, and then in the other directions, right? Each universe also has its own variant. So then the variants of those stacks also proliferate in their own way to then create more, and then to create more, and then to create more. And this is a lot of how universal stacking works, but it also works the exact same way on the smaller level. Just like on Earth, there are an infinite number of Earths. There is an infinite number of versions of you right now in this body, in this lifetime, on this planet, happening right now simultaneously throughout all space and time. This all is how this works, right? But the finite point in which God created itself out of nothing, which we will call the Ein Sof, right? The Ein Sof is unconditional love, the thing which all things could and can and were created from, but was not a thing, right? So I'm saying a thing so we can think about it like it was very just all things. And then it became aware of itself, which created that finite point. Then the finite point said, I want to know more about myself, and expanded itself indefinitely. That finite point, which expanded itself in all directions, I want you to think about this like a 4D object. You're going to have things that are going to be inside, outside when we think about sacred geometry, and it just expands. And it expands through universes, and then it expands through space. So what Source created first was space, because when it expands itself, it has to create finite bubbles. So then you're creating the space, and then you then create in the space, which signifies time. Now, not all vibrations operate within time, but most vibrations operate within space. Does that make sense? So now let's kind of move more into the concept of how I see Source in my practice. So because I work with Kemetic spirituality, how I see Source is this ever-pervading being. And having been and talked and seen and regularly work with that emanator, right, which I call the Ancient of Days, the Son of Days, and the Future of Days, whenever you hear me say that, or the greater I am, that is what I'm talking about. I'm talking about God. I'm talking about Source. I'm talking about the divine, right? I also notice the emanations of Source. Those are the creator beings in all of our legends, our stories, our ancient modalities, things when we're looking at older pantheons, when we talk about that creator being, that is also Source, right? And through the understanding of each individual person on the planet experiencing God through their own experience, they have created collective ideas of how Source emanates throughout the world, regardless of whatever the cultural norms are. Those are also accounted for, blah, blah, blah. In Kemetic spirituality, I see Source as the Aten, right? And the Aten is the finite point, that which is and emanates the creator light through all beings, including deities, because deities are just higher dimensional, what I would call lords of light, or higher dimensional servants of emanations of Source. Don't think about it as we think about servants. Think about when you create a face for yourself to serve you when you go out in public, so that you can keep your most precious points for those who you actually care about and that actually care about you, right? You don't want to reveal your most sacred secrets to a random, right? That's why you have that public mask that you put on there. And Source has many faces, right? So one of those faces that created itself from Aten
was Thoth. So I've been working with Thoth for a really long time. Out of that same Aten came Amun-Ra. And we know that Ra had multiple brothers and sisters. All of those are indicative of a separate sun. Okay? So a separate sun that is coming out of the Aten and then creating from their own emanation of true source light, the other deities. Okay? Now, I know that this is intense, okay? But there were things before Ra and there were things before Aten, but we're not going there, okay? So, but they're all emanations of the same thing. They're all the components to create the same thing, blah, blah, blah. So the way that I work with Source in my practice tends to be layered, because every deity that I work with, every ancestor that I work with, every earth and land spirit that I work with Gaia, the planetary energy that we currently live on, I work with her. And through all of these things, including working with humans and their spiritual teams, entities, higher self, and I am presence, working with these emanations are all Aten. They are. And Aten is. Right? There is no end and there is no real creation unless it is from Aten. All energy is just recycled to create more so that all of us can do just as Aten and expand our consciousness to a point that we can also, as we are creating our reality, and so then we could create ourselves. As I was learning about a lot of this stuff, I was confused AF, right? But I think one of the things that really kind of set this down for me was when I started working with the Odad, or the Ogdad, right? And this comes from the pantheon in which Thoth came from. I believe that was in Thebes. And these Odads are the emanation of which the entire universe is laid on. So it's the foundation. We're talking about wind. We're talking about moisture. We're talking about gaseousness. We're talking about just a lot of these movements that we think of on Earth as kind of foundational for nature, but these concepts can be expanded upon and used to create a plethora of other environments in which another species or another race of beings could then elevate from, that don't look like us. Now that we're kind of moving out of the creator space and talking about how do I work with Aten, or how do I work with the creator? And a lot of the time when I'm working with the creator, it's a lot of mission work. My mission on Earth has to do with bringing together this concept, especially in the spirituality, in the witchcraft, in the occult space. Occultists know this, but outside of the practice, most people don't. And coming into the practice is really hard from regular society because we think that God will not love us anymore, or that God this, or all of these human concepts that are applied to the word God. But when we're talking about the creator works through everything and anybody to help you elevate, because through elevating yourself, through expanding yourself, to creating and learning to create your reality better and better here on Earth, you expand your soul. And your soul expands to have more of these types of experiences. And through all of this, Source is learning from you. Because the way that this emanation right here, this me, this Lauren, this Lo, that you know is not the same anywhere else in the universe through all space and time. Every single version of me has made different decisions, has had different outcomes, has different motivations, has different constructs of love, has different constructs of creatrix, has different physicality ideas that are specific to them, just as I have things that are only specific to me. And what we all have to realize is that our journey to knowing the God within, to be reflecting the God everywhere.
is beautiful. But it's also hard to take that concept and then apply that to your outside world. And a lot of the things that I teach here on my channel are about how do you apply the God concept, the deity concept. Stop creating separation because it doesn't exist. That's a human concept. That's an egoistic concept to understand how to understand the world around us, to put things in categories. But there is no such thing. Categories are not real. Constructs, names, ideas about certain deities, it is not real. It is conceptualized a way for us to understand source. And if we just stopped trying to be right and just started looking at source as is, I can look through any religion, any spiritual modality. I can see source in it, and I can appreciate that. And I can receive what source has for me in that emanation without creating that resistance. Even if it's unfamiliar to me and it doesn't feel good to me, I can appreciate that, but it doesn't mean I have to take it with me. It took a long time for me to get into this concept and to operate in it. And it still has its caveats when you are working in a certain way. But once you realize that all things throughout all time, out space and outside of time and space, something us humans can barely even conceive, throughout all dimensions, throughout all levels of consciousness and elevation, which there are more than 12, but 12 is what we can perceive here. We need to understand that all of this can just be beautiful. All of this can just be without all the extra shit. And from that place, we're able to create peace, we're able to move in grace, and we're able to be the creator that we were built from. The emanation of the creator is us. Therefore, when you create, you are co-creating with the creator. And each moment, each thought, each feeling, each action is a co-creation activity. For the creator, it is creating more, to know more of you, of itself. And for you, you are creating to expand and to know more of you and source itself. And because source is, you are, and because you are, source is. And things are that finite. It's that simple. And when we, I could break this down and we could be here literally forever. Like on my clock, it was 2:24 just now, right? When source is working through us, we can call source into literally anything in our practice. Anything. A prayer, a meditation, a working. I almost exclusively call in source to almost every single thing that I do. When you guys get a reading from me, when you guys are live with me on TikTok and I do readings, or you get a personal reading, whatever, I am always bringing source into that because we need to know that we're supported and we need to feel the love of source in our entire team. When I do healing, I pull source in so you could feel that because source is. And a lot of us feel disconnected from that because as humans, we have learned to be creators. But then our ego takes over that and starts to think that we don't need the creator. But by not needing the creator, it means that you don't need an aspect of yourself. And then you're abandoning a part of yourself because you're not recognizing that source is you. And by denying source, you're denying yourself, your own divinity, your own creatrix, your own soul's essence. So how I work with source in my practice can go on indefinitely, but I will say this. I don't have an altar for source. I use earth as that altar, and I go outside and I speak through the sun to the source, to Amen, to work with that energy. But I could work anywhere because all things are source. And then that allows me to be at peace and to know. And if I ever hear source, and source sometimes booms out the sky, and sometimes sounds like a subtle voice that won't leave you the fuck alone until you step into the shit that you know feels right for you, until you accept the love that you know you deserve, but are afraid that it'll get taken away too soon. To fall into love and to operate out of the heart, which all things were created, from the unconditional love of Source wanting to know itself. Therefore, all of us receive the unconditional love of Source, and through that love, we create. And through the spectrum of love also shows hate. And through that, we also create. Because everything is a spectrum. There is no separation. And all things are made equal through Source itself. I hope that this made sense. And if you guys have questions about how I perceive Source, or any of the information, honestly, that I just kind of like blurted out in this video, please leave it down in the comments below. I would love to do a series on this. The concepts of Source are so intensely strong. The concepts of Source are so intensely strong, so grandiose, but also so small. I wish I could remember the name of this concept, but I'm gonna put a picture of it here, hopefully, if I remember. But there's like this thing where it constantly is unfolding and expanding, creating the same shape. But then if you zoom down into the tails on the sides of this thing, it is creating literally the same thing. It's creating itself within itself, within itself, within itself, within itself, within itself, within itself. And the more that it expands, it's creating itself within itself, and it just keeps spiraling in, almost like the Fibonacci sequence going down or expanding. It is all itself, just within this finite point. And if you get too far away from that emanation point, it becomes chaos. But as you get closer and closer, it becomes organized. And that's exactly how Source works. And a lot of our things on this planet, a lot of the ways that we create consciously and subconsciously work the same way. So I hope that this video has helped you. This is my second closing out and I got to go. So I love you guys. I hope that this has resonated. Leave any questions and comments below. Like this video if you'd like to hear more about these concepts and if this has helped you kind of conceptualize your own idea of Source. So yeah, and I will see you guys in the next one. And there'll also be a light language that goes with this video. So if you haven't already, please check that out. I will link it down below for you guys. And I love you. Bye.